going on, everybody? It's been a while. We got another episode of Bears Over Beers powered by Second City Gridiron. I am Ryan Droste, joined by my guy, Bryan Orenchuk. And sorry for getting at this a little late if you've been waiting on YouTube. We had some technical difficulties, but, as Bears fans, I think we're used to having some difficulties these days. So we're, we're ready to roll. I mean, Bryan, not much has happened since we last recorded several weeks ago. Nothing has changed in the world of Chicago Bears. Just a whole lot of losing, I guess. How you doing tonight, man?
Yeah. Well, you hit the nail on the head. We experienced some annoying difficulties, but it's something we're used to. The improbable outcomes that are less than advantageous to us is what we should expect. It's just the creative array of such outcomes is what us Bears fans have been forced to swallow these days. But it's funny, man. I was kind of back and forth on the fence of what I wanted to drink tonight. And I'm just going to go ahead and get into it because all these technical difficulties, I should have cracked one open already. But I've been waiting for you, waiting for our guests to do so. And I was, debating what I want to do. And I decided on this, a Sierra Nevada Cosmic Little Thing double hazy IPA. Kind of a far out galactic. I'll show you again if you want to.
I'll make you a bit full screen there. Look at that.
Yep. It's a tall boy.
Nice.
Sierra Nevada is local to me, close here to Asheville, North Carolina. It's a hazy, double hazy, kind of like our vision as Bears fans and what this future is going to be. Cosmic, far out, weird. Also what we're dealing with. We just had a head coach fired within season for the first time in over 100 years. So also a tall boy, and it's going to hit you a little bit stronger. That's what I'm going with tonight. How about you, man?
Well, I went with a brewery that's not too far from Chicago. Little Three Floyds action for you. Now, I don't know if you've ever had Alpha King by Three Floyds. It's a pretty good IPA. I'll make myself full screen here and show you guys. This is the Alpha Claus. So it's a Christmas porter, and I know you like your porters, Bryan. So I thought you would appreciate this.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I've had a couple of them this season.
Nice.
Yeah, man, we need this. I can't believe we haven't dipped into the alcohol while we were going through those technical problems. I think me and you were showing more emotion than the Chicago Bears do on the sidelines these days. It was, why is this not working? First, I was having problems with my camera, which I know our guy JB had some problems with his camera on the pod a few weeks ago. So we're not the first there, but I finally get that figured out. And then you were having audio issues, and we just could not get aligned. But finally, here we are. We were 23 minutes late, but we're here for you guys. So if you are drinking alongside us as we get into talking a little Chicago Bears, hit us in the chat. Let us know what you're drinking. Bryan, cheers, my friend. Oh, no. I think you're frozen.
Cheers, man.
Your camera froze, but no. Now he's back. There we go. It's like he's holding that cheers. He's holding the cheers for a long time, but there we go. Who knows?
Oh yeah, it's tasty.
Are you hearing me okay? Am I breaking up?
Yeah, I hear you good, fine. I did break up. I don't know what that was, but I'm back.
Okay.
Hopefully we're back. We should be good. We'll see.
All right. Bryan, let's get into it. Let's talk about this loss. I'm losing count now. 7th loss in a row to the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday. I don't know if you had a chance to go back and watch the tape again or not. If you have any thoughts on what we saw from that bewildering performance from the Chicago Bears out in Santa Clara, California. Any closing thoughts on that one, my man?
What's up, Daniel Barry? Cheers to you, bro. I mean, to me, it was a huge letdown in so many different facets. I feel bad for Thomas Brown. Perplexed. It's one thing to have Matt Eberflus led team coming off some letdowns. This reminded me of the Cardinals performance where it was a a full team just disappointment.
Hmm.
All phases, less special teams than anything, but really offense and defense just laying an egg and like you said, not showing emotion, not looking like they cared. And for Thomas Brown to take over, you know, and that happened, it was man, that may have been the most disappointing loss of the season, honestly. And we've had a lot, so that's saying something. Um, but yeah, I mean, just a disappointment all the way around against a banged up, battered up, backup filled San Francisco team, and they didn't look like they had backups in. They didn't look like they were a 4 or 5 and 17, whatever it was. And we absolutely did. So yeah, no, I didn't do that to myself to go back and look again and watch again. I saw it once. That was one time too many. But I took enough notes for me to be depressed for another couple weeks. So here I am.
We've been having similar thoughts. I saw your comment you had out on Twitter about you signed up to write the column on Windy City Gridiron, and you're thinking it's going to be a fun season to cover the Bears, and look what we have got. And I feel
Yeah.
much the same way with my Game Balls column.
Yeah. I feel hoodwinked.
Oh, it's
It's all
just
your
been
fault,
depressing.
Lester. Yeah.
But I mean, I still like writing and stuff, but it's just been like covering the team this year.
Right.
Who could have foreseen this kind of a disaster? 7 losses in a row. All of these winnable games that they lost coming out of the bye. We went into the bye feeling so good about this team, and
Yeah.
it's been a tale of 2 seasons. That excitement in those couple of games before that, and then everything since. I agree with you. Coming into Thomas Brown's first interim head coaching game, I thought that the team would come out with some fire, try to win this for him. It was certainly a winnable game given San Francisco's injuries that you mentioned there. Of course, they still have Kyle Shanahan calling the plays, and he can always scheme to get his team a W. But I felt like they were missing so many key guys that, God, we definitely have a shot at this one. And like these Bears players essentially mutinied in the locker room to get Eberflus fired. And don't get me wrong, I wanted Eberflus fired too. But like they got the coach that everybody wanted, and then they come out and they look like they don't even want to be there. I mean, watching the game, Caleb showed some emotion. He looked pissed on the sideline. But a lot of these guys,
Yeah.
like, they didn't look like they even cared. I didn't see anyone angry, and it's like, you guys look like a bunch of clowns. What are we doing here?
Yeah. No, and you touched on it with your game balls. I mean, quite frankly, it was slim pickings for who deserved those things. But I think you hit it on the head. TJ Edwards on defense, he was flying around start to finish, just very, and then Rome on offense. Same thing. I think Jalen Johnson, as I think I commented, he looked like he was, pissed off. I don't know if I just lost you again there, but there were a couple guys, but really no more. I mean, I could count the whole team on one hand. Looked like they were playing, and yeah, so definitely a letdown. And we'll see how they bounce back. I'm intrigued to see their second game against the Vikings that they played not too long ago with Thomas Brown, who was the OC at the time, how they're going to adapt to each other, since then. Obviously, 2 different trajectories. We'll get to that here in a minute. But I'm cursed as a Bears fan to be going through this. And my specific curse is like remaining optimistic. You talk to my wife, like, I'm always like, oh, yeah, this is our year. Every year. The 4-12 years, all of them. I go in riding high. I should know by now, but I don't. Cheers to that. Go Bears.
I know. My wife kind of tunes me out as the season goes on when I start complaining. It's like, here we go again. But I think the optimism coming into this year, though, was warranted. I mean, this was a team that won 7 games last year that improved, you would have thought, in multiple ways. You get this new quarterback in there. You get some new weapons on offense. We knew the line was a concern, and especially once the injuries started hitting.
Yeah.
But they appeared to have quite a bit of like enough to certainly win 7 games again, if not more. And a lot of these losses have been these one-score games, as everybody knows. But like, I don't think it was ridiculous for us to think this team could go 10-7. I think they should be a team that's going 10-7. And yeah, the coaching might have lost them some games, but it just feels like once they got to this point where they've lost all these games in a row and basically they're out of the playoff hunt, it's like they're not even trying anymore. It's just
Right.
like the effort is not there. It's like the team has
Mhm.
quit, which, yeah, I guess in the back of my mind, I thought, if they really like Thomas Brown as much as been put out there by the media, don't they want to try to earn this guy the head coach job? I mean, obviously
Right.
that's not going to happen if this is what we're going to see week to week. It's not
Yeah.
even going to be considered.
Yeah.
So just very, very strange to come out that flat. I mean, man, that Washington game just broke this team. I don't
Yeah.
know what else to say. There's no explanation for what we have seen the last 7 games.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's been so many different, just random things going against us. I think had we won any of the divisional games we played that were all close, I think that also could have been a turning point. And we were in those games, to their credit. They played
Mhm.
hard. It was actually fun on Thanksgiving when I had family all around, and including my brother, who's a huge Lions fan. And I got to say, his confidence is through the roof. It was through the roof. We were having a joke throughout the game, the Lions game. Even towards the end, I was like, "Okay, Matt, what is your confidence level on a scale of 1 to 10 right now?" And he was at a 7. At one point it got down to like a 6.5, and then we gave him the game. And I think had we won any one of those tough divisional games where it really matters, I feel like we could be singing a different song right now. But you're right. I mean, the beginning of the season, I thought 9 wins was a conservative guess.
Mhm.
Conservative. I thought 8 or less was, you were kind of being a doom and gloom naysayer. Um, and here we are. I mean, gosh, I don't think we're gonna scratch 7 this
No.
year. I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't win another game. That was the best game we had, in my opinion, for us to win last week. You can have an argument for the Seahawks coming up, but they match up really well against us, especially
Mhm.
their defensive line against our offensive line, which, by the way, yeah, we had some injuries, but our offensive line was pretty healthy going into that Niners game.
Yeah.
We were as healthy as we've been all year up front, save Ryan Bates, who really hasn't done anything for us to begin with. So he's not been a loss because he never was a plus.
Yeah.
So with that said, we were definitely healthier up front than they were, and they dominated. It was Braxton Jones easily his worst game of the season. And it was just, it was rough, man. But, there are still things to watch. Obviously we're Bears fans. But like you said, I want to see some. I want to see some effort. I want to see. The thing I love about Jalen, he's really grown on me lately. I've always liked him, but he plays with a pride. Like he wants to play and be the best on the field. It doesn't matter if we're losing. He is still going to carry himself and put forth the effort that he is the best player on the field. And if we have our guys doing that, like TJ Edwards, like Tremaine Edmonds, where the hell was he on Sunday? Like Montez Sweat, where are these guys when we need them? And they're not showing up. Like if they just dominated their one-on-ones, that game would have been a lot different. Instead, they're, like you said, they're playing passive. So, yeah, man, it was a bummer. I think one thing it highlighted for me was coaching. Kyle Shanahan had them ready, and they were 2 steps ahead of us when they were calling plays, and it was embarrassing to watch. I've coached a little bit in my day, and I've always had teams that were maybe not the most talented, not the biggest, and so we had to overcome some of that. But in NFL, it's a level playing field, and rare is it. Occasionally, even in that setting, I could call a play on offense or defense and just kind of be a step ahead and get the advantage there. But Shanahan was doing it drive after drive, multiple plays. I mean, the opening drive marched down the field, I think 5 plays, 70 plus yards.
Yeah.
5 plays. It's chunk play. They had longer gains in that one drive, 3 or 4, than we had all game. And that was when I was like, oh crap. But again, that highlighted the offensive, just the head coaching and the game planning, and really made me want a guy like Ben Johnson. Now, I will say I expected more, hoped more of Thomas Brown because of what we had seen, and we once again go 3 and out in our opening drive. But coaching, to me, especially when you talk about the team and the talent and what there is to play for, coaching was a big difference on Sunday against the Niners.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, also what you were talking about, with your brother and the Lions and his confidence level and everything. I think, we had the holidays with Thanksgiving since we last talked, and it was interesting to me to kind of get the viewpoint from some of my family members who aren't really Bears fans, but are football fans, and what they thought about the team, and watching that game around them and everything. And I was talking to my brother-in-law who lives in Wisconsin. He's not really a Packers fan, but he follows the Packers because they're close by, and he's never really had a team. He'll follow the Bears a little bit too, being from Iowa. But we talked before the season, and when I was talking about the Bears winning 9 or 10 games, he thought I was being conservative too, just to give you that other, kind of viewpoint from people beyond the Bears fandom. This was not like homerism to think that this team could be better than this at all. And we talked about that this past, over Thanksgiving as well. And so, man, just what a disappointment, and what a disappointment that game was. Because you're right. I mean, watching that Niners game, that made me think that we very well may not win another game this entire season. That was the most winnable. Now, again, we got these NFC North rematches. We had a chance in all 3 of them, but I got to imagine the effort's going to be lower this time around, given what we just saw out in San Francisco. So, we could have beat Minnesota. They're playing a lot better than we are right now, but that game was there for the taking.
Overtime.
And now we're going. Yep. And now we're going up there to their house. They can clinch a playoff spot. They got reason to play hard.
Yep.
I can't imagine that's going to go well.
Monday night.
Yep.
Like that.
Everybody
wants to play on Monday nights. So this is where the guys like Montez Sweat, Tremaine Edmonds, Kevin Byard, and obviously Jalen Johnson on defense, DJ, everybody, they should theoretically show up. But like you said, after the effort we saw against San Fran, my expectations are at an all season low, I will say.
Reminds me of that meme that you'll see on social media sometimes, where it's like our expectations were low, but holy shit, like what is this?
Yeah.
Good God, Bryan, take a swig. Swig for the working man here.
Man.
Anyone in the chat room drinking with us, or is it just us commiserating over the Chicago Bears tonight? We're gonna be talking about here in a little bit, because we're about to go to an ad break, but here in a little bit, we're going to talk about our most disappointing seasons as Bears fans and where this season ranks. We're also, going to preview the Minnesota game in greater depth here in just a second. Before we go to the ad break, I do want to mention, if you're watching us right now on YouTube, if you could hit that thumbs up button, that would really help us out in the YouTube algorithm. We would appreciate that. And of course, if you're not subscribed to Second City Gridiron, either here on YouTube or on the podcast feed, I don't know what you're waiting for. I mean, we got content going up, like lots of creators almost every single day. Of course, we got the flagship Bear and Balance with JB and Lester. Yeah. We got Taylor Dahl doing shows, Bill Zimmerman, Mason, all kinds of stuff going up all the time. If you're a Chicago Bears fan, this is where it's at. So subscribe to the channel while you're here. And as I said, give us that thumbs up while you're at it. So we're going to throw it to a break. And then right on the other side here, we are going to talk about disappointing seasons in our Bears fandom. So stay tuned for that. All right. So, hey, do you think Caleb Williams will rack up more than 2 passing touchdowns this Monday night in Minnesota? Or do you think DeAndre Swift will go over 50 rushing yards? Well, cook up some entries for a shot to win real cash prizes all season long. This is from our friends over at Underdog. Underdog is the best place to cash in on all of your takes this football season. Which players are going to go off, which ones are ice cold. Make your entries in just a few taps and turn your sports opinions into real money. So this football season, Underdog has vulture protection. So that's right. So if you select a designated running back to score a touchdown in your pick'em entry and they get vultured, we'll rescue your entry. They got the red zone rush, a game you won't find anywhere else. You just pick whether or not a player will score a touchdown by swiping right for yes or left for no. Simple as that. Plus, your entry will be automatically boosted. You'll get a 51% profit boost when you play. So join over 5 million fans that are already playing on Underdog with their champs game. You could win money by making entries with your favorite players. Underdog is available in 33 states. So no matter where you are in the United States, there's a good chance that you can play with us on Underdog. And we got a promo code here for listeners of Second City Gridiron. So all you need to do is sign up, deposit, and use the promo code CITY, all caps CITY, to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. That's right. City, CITY, $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. My personal experience, Underdog is super easy to play. I dabble a little bit in sports pick'ems, and I've tried all of them, all the big names. Underdog is one of the easiest to use. Just download the app. You'll see it. It's very highly rated in the App Store. I noticed that right away. Signed up for my account, use that promo code, got on there. Pretty easy to start making those pick'ems. So download the app today, use that code CITY, get $1,000 in bonus cash. And you must be 18 plus to play, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply, void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NEW YORK, or Hope NY, I should say, or text Hope NY. That's Underdog promo code CITY. All right, Bryan. Let's talk about our disappointment and where this ranks historically in this uplifting show about the Chicago Bears. I was just thinking about this all week, and I was thinking this would be a good topic. I was talking with some friends about it. We could talk about it on the pod. Again, our expectations are pretty high coming into this season. So if you think back on your fandom, we're both about the same age here. And so we've been watching the Bears for a long, long time, 30 plus years. In all of those years, I mean, what are some other seasons that stand out to you as being on the level of the disappointment you have in the 2024 Bears, Bryan?
Well, I have not had the luxury of thinking about this all week. You mentioned it to me today, and I will say it settled on a top five pretty quickly. I think for me, we're both same age, like you said. So the 80s is when we first started, and I just liked being in the room watching football at the time. I didn't get disappointed, early on or a little bit late after the Super Bowl shuffle in the early 90s with Ditka, and my favorite player was Neil Anderson, and he was awesome. I loved him, and we had some good teams, didn't really compete, but it wasn't really a disappointment for me because they were good enough. The 90s, after the early 90s, they sucked. And then you get into the 2000s, which is really when, for me, my fandom hit a new level. I was really attentive, knowledgeable, all that stuff, invested. And so top five for me.
Okay.
I don't know if you have this down or going to pop it up or anything fancy, but I'm going to go in order of 5 to number 1 most disappointing. The 5th most disappointing season for me was Super Bowl 41 in 2006. Um, uh, Losing that game, obviously you play to win Super Bowls. It was a great season, and the Super Bowl itself couldn't have started on a better note. I remember exactly where I was. I'm sure everybody watching here does, when Devin Hester, as a rookie, returned that kick for a touchdown to open the Super Bowl in his hometown of Miami. That was unreal. The way that game unfolded, Thomas Jones was not involved enough. Ron Turner is the culprit. Whatever. We can go down that route, but to lose that close to the winning the ultimate prize was it had to make my list. Number 5. Do you want to go back and forth on these? You want me to go down all of my 5? What do you want to do?
We can go back and forth.
Okay.
I don't have '06, so I texted you earlier today. I think I
Yeah,
was looking at this a little bit different. So I was looking more like season as a whole, ended up being very disappointing. I can definitely see why you would pick that, the crushing defeat of finally getting to a Super Bowl, waiting our whole lives for that, and then losing, how we did after having some hope there in the opening kickoff, and even, throughout the first quarter in that game. But yeah, it didn't make my list because I was thinking more like the whole season was a flop. And when I look back on '06, it's like, yeah, we lost the Super Bowl, but man, we won the NFC title game. We were in the Super Bowl. It was cool to see them there. I hope next time, they actually win it. So I don't have that one on mine.
That's cool.
So I'll kind of give you some of them. I guess
You have a 5?
I've got, let's see, 1, 2. I could make it 5. I'll
Okay.
start with my earliest one. Okay, so like you, my earliest memories of watching the Bears are like late '80s. I just to give the listeners some context, on how old we are and everything. I became a Bears fan 2 or 3 years after the '85 Bears. I had a neighbor kid who moved in next door. He was from Chicago. He had the Super Bowl Shuffle. I live about 4 hours from Chicago. He had the Super Bowl Shuffle VHS tape. The '80s Bears still were awesome. And that's how I got into it. How could you not, at the age I was at, to see the Super Bowl Shuffle for the first time and, finding out who Walter Payton was. And, like back then it was like, dang, they're going to win another Super Bowl soon. We've been waiting our whole lives, Bryan.
Yeah.
But the first time I remember having that disappointment, because I remember watching like Richard Dent and William Perry towards the ends of their careers, in the early '90s with the Bears and in the last Ditka teams and everything. But when I think back to the '90s Bears, as you mentioned, they were mostly trash as the decade went on, especially by the late '90s.
Yeah.
But when Wanstead got hired, I do remember being very excited with him, coming over from Dallas and everything, and it was like his second season. They won the playoff game over the Vikings in '94. And lost to that Niners team, just got blitzed by him. But I mean, that Niners team destroyed everybody on their way to winning the Super Bowl. And then '95, we went 9-7 again. But I will never forget the first game in the '96 season. I was in 7th grade, and the opening game was Monday Night Football at Soldier Field, and they played the Dallas Cowboys, who were coming off winning the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 30. And the Bears won that game. And I remember going to school the next day and everybody was talking about like, wow, the Bears are going to be good this year, because they'd had a couple of decent seasons before that. And my hopes were pretty high after that. They just beat the Super Bowl champs on Monday Night Football. And then that season went downhill. They ended up 7-9. And then after that, Wanstead never had another winning season with the Bears. Yeah. And he was out in a few years and things got real bad. They were 4-12 a couple of years later. So I think '96 was the first year as a fan where I felt like ultra disappointed and I had higher expectations coming in.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that very well. And I for me especially, so as I mentioned, my brother's a big Lions fan and a big Barry Sanders fan. I was always I respected Barry. I thought he was the best by far in the game at the time, way more than Emmitt Smith. And Emmitt Smith on the Cowboys, the vaunted, daunted offensive line and all their weapons, beating them, I think was definitely uh, was a letdown to then lose so many games after that for sure. I'm with you there. For me, and I kind of went, we may have gone a little bit different, but I weighed it all together. So the
Hmm.
season at large, what the expectations were, and as well as the end result, given, in my opinion, and where I felt as a fan, where we should end up. And so number 4 on my list is this season. It made my top 5 as far as all the expectations, all that we had. We added Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen. We were returning a top 10 defense. We were on Hard Knocks, which didn't really matter to me as far as expectations and what I realistically thought about the season. But the hype was there. And as you said, people were actually recognizing and appreciating what we can bring, and how we could play. Um, Absolutely, from a season standpoint, and this season hasn't even ended, but even if we won out, it would still be an extremely disappointing season based on everything that's transpired at this point. With Waldron completely falling off the rails, and Flus getting fired, and then showing up last week, flat for the interim head coach, and the players giving up, and where has Montez Sweat been all year? People aren't talking about that enough. Why has Ryan Poles neglected the lines as much as he has? All those things, I think, had we had a better coach, like we just talked about with Kyle Shanahan, we could have won some of those 1-score games. But would it have really mattered in the long run, or would it have just been more of a Band-Aid over the issues that were lying dormant on our squad and with the coaching and whatnot? So this year has definitely been top 5 for me overall. The interesting thing about it is you could point to like 5 or 6 games that have been disappointments. But the year, this year has definitely been in my top 5. Number 4 for me. How about you?
I'd probably put this year at number 4 too. Yeah,
Okay.
it's definitely in my top. It's way more disappointing that 96 team. Like I mentioned, it's
Yeah.
I was young then, but I was so excited after that first game. So that put it maybe in my top 5. So I think after that, I personally I have to look at seasons where we were coming off of success, and so I felt like it was going to continue. And so I think my next one would be the 02 Bears, because
Okay.
2001 was such a magical season, 13-3 out of
Right.
nowhere, pretty much. Anthony Thomas, offensive rookie of the
Rookie of the
year.
year. Broke the
Yep.
single season record for Chicago Bears franchise history.
Yep. I got his
I
jersey
loved
in my
A-Train.
closet over there.
Do you
Not
really?
yeah. Yeah, I got the
Oh,
road
nice.
jersey, Anthony Thomas, and
Nice.
didn't get much wear out of it, but I still have it.
I have a Rashawn Salam jersey, who had the
Oh,
record before A-Train, but didn't have as good of a team. But no, I remember that well. I mean,
yeah.
didn't we had, let's see, you said 2002?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was a tough one.
yeah, that, I mean, that was the year they're playing at Champaign and they're renovating Soldier Field, and
Right.
but still they're coming off a 13-3, and I remember thinking, they lost that divisional game the year before to the Eagles, and God, I was so hoping to see them play the Rams, and I thought we had a chance to go to the NFC title game, and it's like, all right, we're going to continue this success. We've got this young stout defense, we got this new stud running back, and man, I mean, a 4-12 season
Yeah.
after that, it was. I think it started out okay. I want to say I'd have to look this up, but I feel like
Yeah. We
early
won our
on, like
first
they won a
2.
couple of games.
Yep,
Yeah,
we won our first 2 against the Vikings and the Falcons.
that's right.
And then lost, gosh, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in a row, including 2 in overtime. And then won a game in overtime, and then lost, and then won, then lost some more. So yeah, okay.
Yeah, we got the quarterback carousel that year. Jim Miller got injured. They ended up starting Chris Chandler. Henry Burris started that year.
That was a Burris
A-Train
year.
ended up breaking his index finger on his right hand late in the season. That season was a total disaster after coming off of that great 0-1 season. So I think that would be next on my list, just because we were coming off a playoff appearance, which have been
Yeah.
hard to come by as Bears fans in this century.
Yeah, no, for sure. So my number 3 is actually, gosh, man, 2013. Um, so I think this is also coming off a playoff loss. I'm not. I think we. Yeah, I think I don't know if we made the playoffs that year in 2011 or 2012 rather, but 2013 is is the year. Gosh, man,
Yeah,
where
2012 was Lovey got fired. We went 10-6, and they still missed the playoffs.
yeah, they still missed. So
Yeah.
that was it was a decent year. We didn't make the playoffs. We were third in the comp or in the division. We didn't make the playoffs though. But 20, yeah, that's right. So 2013, we get offensive guru Mark Trestman, and we had 4 Pro Bowlers on offense that year. We had Forte, Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey, and then rookie Kyle Long, crushing it. I think we had at least 1 Pro Bowler on defense too. I think Tim Jennings. That was towards the end of Pepper's career, but he was still a force. But the way that season ended was the Week 17 loss against the Packers.
Oh, God.
Remember that game?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
that game, that to me might be the most disappointing game of my fandom, where we absolutely should have won. People remember all the time the bogus 38 seconds left. Aaron Rodgers evades Julius Peppers and finds a wide open Randall Cobb for like 48 yards for a touchdown. Inexplicably behind all our safeties, who came up thinking it was going to be at the sticks on a 4th and 8, mind you.
Yeah.
But they forget about the second quarter gaff where James Anderson
A fumble.
Yeah. Watches a fumble just sit there, lie still, where one of their reserve receivers picks it up, doesn't do anything with it, realizes nobody's tackling me, there's not been a whistle, everybody in the sideline is yelling me to go. So he runs for a touchdown in the second quarter after we had picked off Aaron Rodgers twice in that game early on. Easily should have won that game. They win it, knock us out of the playoffs. We would have been in the playoffs if that happened. To me, anytime you get a new coach, there's a new level of optimism going on. When he's an offensive guy, we've got these offensive weapons. We've got these Pro Bowlers in Chicago against Green Bay, and we lose. That, to me, was my number 3 most disappointing season of my fandom, 2013. How about you for number 2?
Yeah, I'm gonna cheat a little bit here, so I've had 96, I've had 02, and I got like 3 seasons on my list that are all really close, and they're right around 2013. When you look back here, the Bears were so close so many years in a row, and then just stuff kept going wrong. So I'm gonna throw, if this is like my second and third, I'm just gonna talk about 3 seasons all together here, because I feel like this conversation naturally just kind of flows together with some of these. So, in 06, we're coming off of that Super Bowl, and 07, just like the team had tons of injuries, and it just became one of those things where, like, all right, well, this is a lost season because everyone's injured. Mike Brown got injured again. I think Grossman got injured. Not that he was great, but he had quarterbacked the team to the Super Bowl.
Oh, right.
I was hoping he would show some growth that year, but like we had so many injuries in 07, it wasn't happening. And then remember in 08, they missed the playoffs on the last game of the season after all the teams that needed to lose lost, and then we lost to the Texans, I believe it was. It was like they were scoreboard watching, and they still lost. They had won, they would have gotten the playoffs. And then, 09, you get Cutler coming in, and you feel like, all right, we finally got a quarterback. And then the first game, Brian Urlacher dislocates his wrist and missed the entire season. So then it's like, finally things went right in 2010. and we got to the NFC title game, but it was this great season. I'm gonna throw probably '09 next, just because Cutler was there. He had been a Pro Bowl quarterback, and then to have Brian Urlacher. I remember like looking at my phone the next morning after that game and seeing like a text or something about how he was out for the season. And I was just crushed because I was so pumped for that year that we were finally going to have a legit quarterback. And then like the quarterback of the defense he's out, so that would be the next one on my list.
Yeah.
But then like 2010 was such a great season. And then like the second number 2 on my list, it just flows right from this. I would kind of couple 2011 and 2012, because it was like 2011 was going really well. I think we were 7-3. They had just had this big win over the Chargers, and Cutler broke his thumb on the interception tackle, and he missed the rest of the season, and the team just totally fell apart. That would have been a playoff season too if he didn't get injured. And then in 2012, they had a 7-1 start, and they finished 10-6. When they're 7-1, you think they're for sure going to make the playoffs,
right?
And then to go 10-6, to go 3-5 down the line, and Lovey got fired out of that because they didn't make the playoffs despite having a winning record. That was pretty crushing, because that was kind of like the last stand of that great defense. A couple of them were around after that, but that was the last year where they were like really good. And it was like we wasted the defense yet again by not getting into the postseason. I mean, all of those years, basically 2005 to 2012, they had a chance to make the playoffs. Like every single one of those years, they're right there.
And it was, we had Urlacher, we had Hester, Hall of Famer, Peppers, Tillman. We had all these guys. That year you just mentioned, I think it was at 2012, and that's the year that we killed the Titans like 51, and Peanut had like 3 peanut punches that game. Urlacher had an interception for a touchdown. And I remember watching that where he looked slow as hell, bro, on that interception that he returned for a touchdown. But he was still in the right place, right time. We still had Briggs. We had the talent still. And so that, I'm with you there. I do think they go hand in hand, and I think that's another reason why 2013 made the list for me, is because Urlacher was gone at that point. He had retired, but we still had the talent on the team, especially on offense, which we had never have. And that's another thing. I remember where I was when I heard about Jay Cutler getting traded to the Bears. In fact, I was in Denver at the time. I lived and worked out there as an EMT and firefighter. And so Brandon Marshall was with the Broncos. I played college ball with Brandon Marshall. He was with the Broncos. We get Cutler, and then we get Brandon Marshall again. They're on the same team, crushing it. And why did you pick this topic, dude?
Because we're drinking and it's been a depressing time. And I knew it would be like a good trip down memory lane in a bad way. But hey, look, all I've been doing is thinking negative lately about the Bears. So why not?
Yeah. Oh God.
I thought it would be a good listen for the listeners, maybe. But,
no, yeah. You commiserate together for sure. Misery loves company. So my number 2 is 2019. 2019, and we had somebody on the Twitter mention 2019. It actually made my number 2. And this was definitely more overall season, like you talked about. Fresh off the double doink. Gosh, man, if Cody Park ever shows up in Chicago again. That was we had home field advantage. Oh man. High expectations going to that next year. We added David Montgomery, lost Jordan Howard, still had Tariq Cohen, Allen Robinson, Mitch Trubisky going to take another step. And then that first game, Mitch Trubisky ain't it. Remember that? Like he could not hit the backside.
10-3. The opening game on Thursday night against Green Bay at home. Right. Dude, I remember that was the game, honestly, where I started to feel like maybe I care too much as a fan, because like it was like you were so crushed how they lost that playoff game. And I'm thinking like, man, if I'm on that team, I'm gonna like if I'm coming off that playoff loss, how they lost, it would bother me like the whole offseason. And I would think that you would come out, all that excitement, everyone was talking about him as a Super Bowl contender. that they would come out just on fire against the Packers at home, the opening
Yeah.
game for the NFL season, season 100, number 100, and they couldn't even score a touchdown. I remember I was so pissed watching it,
Yeah.
but then when I watched the players on the field afterwards, they're all just laughing and joking around. I was like, wait a second, why do I care so much if they're the
Yeah.
ones on the field and they're just they don't even look angry? And I was like, man, how crushing was that to lose 10-3 to Green Bay at home after the way last season ended? And this is the next game, and then that's how we came out. That was disappointing. Yeah. 2019, by the way, is number 1 on my list. I'll just throw that in right now. That to me, because I felt like they legit were going to be a Super Bowl contender that year. I mean, lots of big name reporters did too. It seemed like they were coming in, that Mitch would take the next step, and they didn't really have too many weaknesses on the team. They had the young defense. Boy, were we wrong.
Matt Nagy, he was coach of the year.
Yeah.
Remember 2018, we had the coach of the year. We had Trubisky, who I think made the Pro Bowl as a rookie. We had Allen Robinson. We remember in the NFC Championship, or not championship, in the playoffs, I think it was Eddie Jackson was out because of injury, and he was he was a Pro Bowl player in his prime.
Yeah.
I think that year he was an All-Pro even. Everybody's coming back another year forward, and so that was number 2 for me, 2019. Number 1 for me was 2010. 2010. You talked about that era of 2005 to 2012. 2010 was our sweet of the sweet spot.
Yeah.
We had the best team that we had. It was prime Urlacher, prime Peppers, prime Briggs, prime Peanut, prime Hester. We still had Forte. We had Cutler. We had Greg Olson.
Yeah.
I mean, and we won in the playoffs, divisional round against the Seahawks at home. So this is a culmination of the full season, and then we made it happen and succeeded in the playoffs to go up at home against Green Bay. Cutler gets hurt. Caleb Haney comes in. BJ Raji has a pick 6, and we lose to Green Bay. And people forget all the time. We only lost, was it 21-14 that game?
7 points, yeah. They had the ball at the end. They were driving with the ball, if I remember right.
With Caleb Haney.
But with Caleb Haney. I will always believe they would have won that game if Cutler did not get injured.
Absolutely.
You can call me a meatball all you want. I mean, that Packers team barely got in the playoffs.
Absolutely. But then they won the Super Bowl, which adds to my disappointment.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely adds to my disappointment for that year, is because they shouldn't have beat us. They did. Then they win the whole thing. So that should have been all this wah. I get it. Should have been our year.
Yeah.
But it was there. Of all teams, the Packers. And it was at Soldier Field when it happened. So that, to me, takes the cake. Number 1 most disappointing season in my fandom was 2010.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, watching that loss, I probably dislike that more than losing the Super Bowl, to be honest with you. That is probably my least favorite game I've witnessed, because it was the Packers at Soldier Field. It was a game we should have won. The injury to Cutler. I mean, I understand why you would. If I was making an all-time most disappointing game, that would be number 1 for me, for sure, 100%. Yeah. So, wow, what a trip down memory lane, Bryan.
Yeah, this sucks. I'm not coming back. Don't even invite me, bro. Golly. Oh man.
Really quick, to bring it back to the 2024 Bears now, to make a hard right turn. What?
Not hard enough, right? Because this team still is very disappointing. But
yeah, true.
Continue.
Well, maybe we'll feel excited again after the coaching search is over and everything. I just wanted to throw out, what's out there in the news right now about the Bears and the names they're eyeing and everything. And I think it was Dan McNeil had a report that 4 of the names the Bears are particularly interested in are Ben Johnson, of course, Brian Flores, Joe Brady, and Mike Vrabel. And then I've heard different things from different big media personalities. So Jeremy Fowler of ESPN was on CHGO, and he said that sources around the league believe that the Bears are going to lean towards a coach with prior head coaching experience to steady the ship. So that would make you think Flores or Vrabel. But then this morning, I saw Florio was on 670, and he said that, quote, when you hear that the number one concern is Caleb Williams and getting the most out of Caleb, it's impossible to see anyone other than an offensive coach getting the job. So the direct opposite, where you think they're maybe looking at Brady or Johnson the most. Who knows what to believe at this point, Bryan? I mean, do you have any thoughts on the little bit we know about the head coaching search right now?
I know that I'm not upset about them being reportedly interested in Vrabel or Flores. And I will agree with that commenter that just said Ben Johnson is the guy. He is my top choice as well. But anytime I'm in the staffing industry for a living, anytime that you have an opportunity to interview the best of the best out there available now, you do it.
Mm-hmm.
If for no other reason than to compare what else might be out there. So you know the concern about a Ben Johnson or a Joe Brady, which I love, I like. I'm very interested in both of them, as I am Aaron Glenn, who was not mentioned, but he's defensive coordinator for the Lions, who arguably has done more with less in Detroit, and a former player. The issue is with these coaches that have not done it before. Can they be the head coach or can they just call plays? Well, if you're going to talk to a coach that has done it before, hear what he has to say about how he leads, what his plan is, all the stuff. You know, we talk about Bill Belichick just got that job at North Carolina, and he gave them like a 700-page football Bible with all the details on what he would do organizationally and coaching-wise and player roster, all that stuff. Find out what these previous experienced head coaches have done or would do with your team and compare them with what Ben Johnson says he would do, what Joe Brady says he would do. If one, I mean, you'll see the difference. Is it going to be more prepared, less prepared? Does he seem like he's ready for what he's going to get into or not? And I think so. I have no issue. Like all these people on Twitter and on WCG are getting upset and pissed off for the Bears administration for interviewing these folks. I applaud them for doing that. I wish they could have interviewed Bill Belichick and seen that 700-page Bible. Like I want them to interview as many people as possible, including these offensive minds, because I do agree it's got to be about Caleb and the offense. And I just, my concern is like the biggest thing for me for a defensive guy like Vrabel or Flores, and I like them both, and Aaron Glenn, I like them both. What is your plan for offense?
Mm-hmm.
And how can you convince me as a GM and CEO that that's good for the team? And can you convince, because nobody really knows on this side of things, but that to me is the biggest selling point. So I'm cool with them interviewing. I think Vrabel's a great guy. Seems like a great coach. I think Flores, I was always shocked at how much Flores got out of his Dolphins teams that were not that good. So there is definitely a lure there. I also love the idea of poaching from a division rival.
Yeah.
But what's the plan for Caleb and the offense? That's the biggest thing. So the silver lining for me maybe is depending on how Thomas Brown does, if he does enough on offense, but the defense, whatever, or he just doesn't handle the head coaching, maybe he can stay on as offensive coordinator and keep that consistency with Caleb. But I'll tell you, man, that Niners game, it did a lot to ruin my expectations. So I don't have much hope for him. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy for them interviewing a broad spectrum. And but I do have my preferences, and Ben Johnson, Joe Brady are at the top of that list for sure.
Yeah, I mean, look at what we just went down with, those disappointing years with the Bears. And in a lot of those seasons, especially when we talked about that 05 to 2012 run, what they didn't have was the offense. If we would have had even a pretty competent offense earlier, or then by the end, if we could have stayed healthy, once they had Cutler and some of those guys, that they had a Super Bowl winning team. But always in Chicago in the modern era, we've been missing the offensive piece. And I lean to offense too, because it's really all about Caleb. We had this number one pick. We need him to work out. We need him to be what we all think he can be. And to me, it just would not make sense to hire a defensive coach. Like that just flies in the face of what they should be doing right now. I didn't like the Eberflus hire when it happened, just having a young quarterback in Justin at the time.
Yeah.
And that proved to be correct. I mean, my worry with a defensive coach is if they get a good OC, they're going to get picked off, and then they're going to have to bring in a whole new offense. And so I like the idea of having an offensive head coach whose system we're basing our entire offensive off of, and that you can have an OC helping them run it. But when you lose an OC, nothing changes. And so I think it would behoove them to have a guy like Ben Johnson in there. Now, if it was one of the defensive coaches that have been named, I'd probably prefer Flores at this point in time. Nothing against Vrabel, but like, I don't know, man. It just kind of gives me vibes of like John Fox when they hired John Fox. I know he's like about 10 years younger than John Fox was when they hired John Fox, but it just kind of feels like, the locker room's in turmoil. Let's bring in this guy with some experience and steady the ship. That's exactly what the John Fox thing was, and that was a total disaster. Yeah. And he had a lot of success. I mean, this is a guy that coached in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, more than Vrabel.
Yeah. So I don't particularly like the idea of hiring Vrabel. I just don't. And if you look at where we've been with Bears coaches after Ditka, they went with 3 defensive guys in a row. But since then, since Lovey, I mean, they've pretty much been alternating. Trestman offense, Fox, defense, Nagy offense, Eberflus defense. So like it feels like the pendulum's going to go to offense this time. So my bet is it's probably going to be an offensive guy.
Yeah, don't bet.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's Chicago.
unless it's on underdog, then you can bet. But then you can do the pick 'em, I should say. But it's just, boy, I feel like they're going to get dragged across the coals if they hire a defensive head coach, given that we got Caleb Williams on this team. Like, I think the national media is not going to get it all, and I won't get it either. I think they have to get the offense figured out. I think that's the most pressing need here. I feel like it's easier to bring in a defensive coordinator that can shore up that group than it is to be a defensive coach and to find an offensive mind that's going to work out as your OC, because they end up getting picked off all the time.
Right. Yeah. Well, one of the DC prospects I've seen is Robert Saleh. And he's a former head coach. He'd have no issue running a defense and doing so more productively than an Eric Washington would. So a couple dark horse names that I think are very intriguing. I still want Ben Johnson, Joe Brady, Liam Cohen. Those are kind of my order, but Brian Dable, I wanted him over Flus when Flus was hired.
Same.
I think there's a chance he comes available, and I think Eric Bieniemy is another one that I feel he just retired, pulled out of UCLA. He was actually coaching with Deshaun Foster at UCLA. He's now back in the mix for head coaching jobs in the NFL. I think that very realistically could be a possibility. I think it's probably more likely he starts as he gets back in as an OC. But like you said, if he gets on as an OC and does well, then he's gone. So we're going to have, back to square one, the same problem. But I'm with you. I'm all about weakening a division rival is kind of where I'm at right now. I think Ben Johnson's that. Aaron Glenn does that as well. Brian Flores does that as well. They've got the intel already on the division, the game planning for the division. I just, but again, offense is where I'm leaning for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I see we got a Vikings fan in our chat room, by the way.
Oh, do we? Oh, yeah. Holla, holla. The one thing I am excited about is that I've seen the reports. Yes, definitely F the Packers and Lions for sure. But the one thing I'm excited about, which to be honest with you, I never thought I'd have to even say these words, but it tells how naive I have been as a fan, is apparently the McCaskies are willing to open the checkbook for whomever it is, and they're not going to let that be a determining factor, a deterrent. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's that's probably bigger than we realize. I also think that same approach for polls is going to be huge, which I'm curious to hear your thoughts on GM. I know we don't have much time, but do you want polls to stay on and putting you on the spot right now, or do you want him gone?
If you would have asked me this a month ago,
I'm
2
asking you
months ago,
now,
yeah, I
right
know.
now.
I would have said for sure staying on then. I've gone pretty negative on him now
Yeah,
because I don't want it to be a deterrent on hiring a coach, like a good coach.
yeah,
And I can understand why none of these top name coaches would want to come in with him looking like he's a lame duck head
yeah,
coach, and then that's going to endanger them. So I think if based on the intel they're getting, that it's gonna make it hard to hire one of those top names like a Ben Johnson, then I would probably move on. Because look, I've liked a lot of the moves he's made, but I think his inability to address the O line when he was an offensive lineman is pretty damning.
yeah,
That he couldn't spend some money and get
yeah,
that figured out, and then of course the D line issues too, but especially the O line. Um, I just don't know that he's had 3 years, right? I mean, he's had time to put together a winner, and some of this has to fall on him too. I mean, and especially with the coaching hires too. I
oh
know
yeah,
there's talk about if he was forced into some of these hires, but I mean, look, dude just hired Shane Waldron, and that was a total disaster. And at some point, he's got to shoulder some of the blame. So I never imagined in the summertime I would sour on him. I was a big fan. I've soured quite a bit. I would not be disappointed if they moved on and they started fresh with a new GM and a new coach. What about you?
yeah. No, I'm same boat. I definitely I'm 100% do not let that prohibit you from hiring a head coach. If a Ben Johnson wants to bring in his own guy, see a Ryan Poles.
Mhm.
But I'm leaning towards keeping Poles right now. I think he's had a plan, and I think he's working his plan. I think his plan has not worked the way he's wanted it to, with the way he's been what's the word? Frugal, judicial, when it comes to his spending in the offseason and how he attacks the draft. I think he's been very calculated from a strength standpoint. What is available in free agency? What is the strength of the draft? And then attacking it the way it should be based on those strengths. And and what holes we have on our team. So I feel like right now it's obvious where our holes are. I
Mhm.
think he had hoped and he had been frugal with the offensive line for sure. I think he's ready to go all in. And what I've heard, what the rumors out there about how he's learned from his mistakes, he's ready to spend big on there's not many holes in our team. Like we got what, like 70, 80 million in cap space. Just sign some steady, consistent contributors on offensive line, defensive line, and address that in the draft, and we're good. And so, because of that, I feel like he's been thinking. And plus, there's rumors of Flus had a 5-year contract, Poles had a 4-year contract. So let's see how Ross being a GM, which would be my preferred job in football world, is a long term picture. And now, granted, you don't always get that luxury, but let's see how he does this offseason, and if he can really strengthen those weaknesses. And if he can, it's almost as if I feel like we'd have a roster strong enough to compete with anybody, which is one of the reasons why I think we do have one of the very many reasons why I think we do have the most attractive head coaching vacancy out there, is because we're not that far off. And our record and the 1 point game or 1 score games tells you that. But it's not that far off. You sign a couple um, big hog mollies up front, and we're right there. So we'll see if
I,
he does that. But I don't want it to prohibit us from signing
yeah,
somebody at head coach.
I I'm a little concerned that he might start overspending on free agency just because he is concerned about his job.
Yeah.
That's a major concern for me. Is like now he's going to try to save his job and he's going to overspend, and then we're going to have cap problems. I feel
Yeah.
like he's been too frugal.
Right.
There's also the issues of he seems like a super decent guy. We got some like a window to that on Hard Knocks. I
Yeah.
think he's let his feelings get in the way of making business decisions. Obviously,
Agree.
with Valus is the big one when he had trade offers for him, and he just really hung on to him when it clearly wasn't working out, and he should have made
Yeah.
that trade. So I hope he has learned, like you just leaned into, that he's learned from his mistakes. I think he can definitely be a capable GM. I'm worried about the impact on the coaching search now. And I also, there's been reporting on this. We don't know exactly what the true story is. There's been reporting that he wanted to move on from Eberflus earlier this year
Patriots.
than they did.
Yeah.
I think not jettisoning Eberflus last offseason was a huge mistake. I
Yeah, me
mean,
too.
I mean, you can just search my Twitter feed. I mean, I wanted him gone last year. I
Yeah.
thought they should have hired Jim Harbaugh, like a lot of us. I thought it was the easy thing to do. I know there people say he was always going to the Chargers, but we'll never know, man. I feel like the Chicago Bears is a way better job than the Chargers, just from a fan base perspective, from a
Right.
prestige perspective. He played for
Right.
the Chicago Bears. To me, it
Right.
just made all the sense in the world. Bring in a quarterback and a
Yeah.
successful head coach to pair
Right.
with Caleb.
No, had he been courted heavily, would he have changed his mind? That we never
Exactly.
know. Right.
We'll
I'm
never
with you.
know. And
Yeah.
there's the stuff with Warren and him getting along, and who knows, but we'll never know. But I definitely wanted Eberflus out. And I
Yeah, me
think
too.
hanging on to him, I mean, I'm kind of holding that against polls too. I will say I don't think he's going to get fired. I would be pretty stunned if he did. But if they did it, I wouldn't blame them. Honestly, I wouldn't. If they want to just start fresh together, we'll see.
Yeah.
We will see, and we'll probably be talking about it on the show when it all goes down,
Uh,
Brian. So, um, yeah, I think we're about to hit the road here. I mean, we kind of talked about the Vikings earlier. Do you have anything else you want to say on the game?
On the Vikings, I mean,
Yeah,
no, I mean, we took them to overtime. We had. I was very impressed with Caleb and Thomas Brown's approach to that game with the heavy blitz and just the pressure of the Vikings, the tight window throws that Caleb was spraying throughout the game. It was one of his best games ever. But at the end of the day, if our guys don't show up to play, it doesn't matter what the scheme is. Nothing matters. And so I feel like we can and should compete in this game on Monday Night Football. But based on what we just saw on Sunday, I'm not optimistic.
same.
So it's right there.
Yeah, they gotta throw the pressure at Darnold early. He's not super mobile, so I think they need to get after him early. That was the big thing in OT, is they just kind of hung back and played so soft and just
I
let him
mean,
pick them apart.
so gosh, dude, that OT, Montez Sweat had the most pristine prime opportunity for a strip sack in our own on their territory in like the 5-yard line, and he didn't do it, and he got a sack, and he got up and he was upset with himself. But big time players need to make big time plays, especially in big time moments, and
Yeah,
he didn't. They drive down the field, kick the game winning field goal, win the game. And like you said, we need to be after him. Montez Sweat needs to show up,
yeah.
period. He needs to show up and make his impact on this game. The last game I highlighted Brian O'Neill, the right tackle, and Montez Sweat that game. And overall, O'Neill absolutely did enough to win the right tackle for the Vikings. So we'll see, man. Expectations are an all-time low, all season low. Maybe not all time, but all season low. And so I'm not expecting anything. I got knocked out of the fantasy playoffs because I had Caleb Williams and he had a clunker.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I'll be watching Monday night. In fact, I'm doing the post game show with Mason on
Nice.
Monday. Yeah, it'll be fun.
Be a
Hopefully,
late night on the East Coast for you.
yeah. I don't know what
Drink
I'm
some
thinking,
coffee.
man. Yeah,
Get a coffee beer while you're at it.
yeah. Coffee
Yeah.
porter shows are good.
Yeah, you said it. Montez needs to show up. You've barely heard his name called in weeks. He's got to earn that payday. We got to have a good day from the secondary. I mean, they've got arguably the best wide receiver duo in the league right now. Addison and Jefferson. We got to slow them down. We need Jalen to have a big game. I don't really want to see Tyreek out there. I want to see Smith
Terrell
out
Smith.
there.
Yeah, for sure.
He's been good. I don't know why Tyreek Stevenson's playing over Terrell Smith. So I want to see Smith out there. Minnesota guy. Gopher guy, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Went to the U. So I'd like to see him in his homecoming get some playing time over Tyreek, and Jalen live up to his billing as top corner in the league. And they should be in it. But like you said, Brian, I'm not super confident in it. I'm not going to go in with any expectations.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. I think you and I will see each other in a couple weeks too.
Yep.
Yeah, man, enjoy this week, enjoy the game, and bear down.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in. It's been a fun trip down memory lane in some ways, but a good discussion, a good discussion at least with my guy Bryan here. You can follow us on social media. I'm at Ryan Droste. That's Droste. He's at Bryan Orenchuk. That's Orenchuk. Right?
Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, well done.
Check us out on social. And of course, Windy City Gridiron for all the written work, and subscribe here on Second City Gridiron on the podcast and YouTube feeds. I'll be back next week with Jacob Infante, and I will see you all then. And Bryan and me will be back in 2 weeks. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll see you next Wednesday night. Bear down.